Now we're going to make our frozen fruit pie filling. I know that on your Canvas recipes you have a recipe for apple pie filling, and one of these days I will get a chance to demo that. But right now all I have is the frozen fruit, and so we're going to do a frozen fruit pie filling instead, and it happens to be blueberries this time, and I think I'll be very happy with it. It's delicious pie. So we have our water and sugar, lemon zest, lemon juice, and our pinch of salt and our ground cinnamon in here heating up. And basically all I want to do is melt the sugar. So I'm waiting for that to happen right now. In my separate bowl here, I have my cornstarch slurry. So we have the cornstarch plus the additional 2 ounces of water. So sometimes what happens if you measure this out ahead of time, which I did, the cornstarch will sink to the bottom and the sediment will just really get stuck. So you have to stir it again before you use it. So I wanted to make sure I got everything up so that I didn't have any issues. Now I have my vanilla here and my lemon juice waiting. I want to make sure that I add these things later, because if you add them now, you're going to cook it out, all that flavor will be lost. So I want to add those after I almost finish everything. Now, today we're using wild frozen blueberries. If you can find them in the market, definitely get them. They're a little smaller, but the flavor is amazing for the blueberries. Now, you know, when blueberries are in season, I recommend that you buy them in bulk, freeze them, and then you can have fresh, well not fresh, well you can have, you know, fruit like this all the time. And it's really, really delicious, okay? So I'm just stirring the sugar here, and I'm starting to see a little bit of heat on the sides. Now, how about substituting this for another type of frozen fruit? Absolutely, you could. Okay, that's why it's called frozen fruit pie filling. You could do frozen cherries, you can do frozen peaches, heck, you can even do frozen apples, and it would be an apple pie. But the frozen fruit filling ratio and method for apple pie is a little different than the apple pie recipe that I gave you. That one requires fresh apples, and it would have a different ratio of liquid, and you have to saute the apples first and all that good stuff. So perfect. Everything is now dissolved, and what I want to do is stir this cornstarch mixture one more time. This is called a slurry. Okay, and I will add it into my mixture here. And what we're doing is we're thickening this. Okay, you can call it a sauce. Okay, for me this is actually the binding agent for the frozen fruit, which is blueberries today. So this is going to cook up really thick. Okay, that is correct. You want it to be thick. So if you're nervous when you get it cooking and you're like, oh no, it's too thick, it's perfect, all right? So we just have to let this cook, and it's going to thicken. I'm going to go ahead and switch to my rubber spatula. Okay. Maybe turn the heat up just a little bit. Looks good. Now you're probably wondering, why does this have lemon zest and lemon juice in it? Isn't it going to make it too lemony? Well, it actually complements the flavor of berries quite well. So if you were to do any type of frozen fruit, you want to add a little bit of lemon juice and or lemon zest to it, because it's just a really nice complement. If you don't have that, you can even do orange. That would be good too. Now, a little fun tip that, or a fun fact that I learned from Marie Callender's, the very famous pie shop, is that Marie Callender's blueberry pie actually is not 100% blueberries. It actually has a combination of frozen blueberries and apples, and that helps to lower the cost of the filling, and it also helps to set the pie in the end because of the pectin content. So I will go ahead and talk about pectin in the lecture for this pie week. You'll learn a little bit about what pectin does. Okay, interesting fact. Okay, so we're getting there. This is a little bit of a process. Just have to wait for it to happen. You'll probably notice that I don't have a gas stove. I know, right? 2 chefs in the house, no gas stove. Well, we happen to have electric because we have solar panels, so I want to make use of that as much as possible. Oh, we're starting to get thickening. You see it? There it is. Keep stirring, okay? You want to get to the edges as well as you're doing this. And if you have some chunks in the beginning, don't worry. Just keep going. And once this thickens fully, it'll be smooth. Okay. I remember my friend who gave me this recipe. Her name is Chef Christian. And she used to tell the students that you're making Vaseline. And literally, it looks like Vaseline. It's so hilarious. Vaseline that you eat, of course. Oh, getting thick, getting thicker. Okay, so if it's starting to thicken too quickly, you can adjust your heat down just a bit. That's fine. Okay, this is it, guys and gals and in between. So now we have our thickened mixture. I'm taking it off the heat for just a second because I don't want it to burn. I'm going to add in my frozen fruit now, okay? All of it. And the thing is, the heat from this mixture and the fruit is going to just break up that sauce. So we want to just combine it together. We do not want to put this back on the stove, okay? So at this point, take it off your stove. You just want to mix it in. Whoops. Okay, we can add in our lemon juice now. So I had 1 tablespoon. We're going to add in our vanilla. You know I never measure vanilla. Okay, so now this is ready to go into our pie shell. Okay, once the pie dough is rolled out, then we're going to go ahead and put this in and bake it. See you then. Now let's go ahead and finish our frozen fruit pie. Now I took my pie dough out of the fridge and it was nice and solid, and I put it between 2 pieces of parchment and I rolled it out, just like I did with the tart dough. So I didn't feel like I had to demo that whole part again. But as you remember, take your rolling pin, start from the center, and you don't want to go over the edge. You want to just go to the edge and rotate it, okay? So I have this dough at about 1/4 inch thickness, and the width of it, I had to just kind of measure to see if it would go maybe about 2 inches past the edge of my pie pan. And I happen to be using this pie pan today, and so it's a little larger than our typical one. That's okay. That means I'll have a big blueberry pie. That's okay with me too. So let's put our crust in. So we just take out and take a look at that beautiful striations of the fat. So this is going to be that flakiness, everyone, and it's all that hard work of the food processor. Okay, so we're going to put this crust in, and the easiest way to do that is to roll your crust onto the rolling pin. Oops. Carefully. Okay. All right. Okay, so you see here, now you see how it has all that space underneath, so we want to make sure that we properly tuck it in. I think that I'm a little uneven here, so I'm going to actually scoot the dough over a tiny bit. There we go, okay? So you want to make sure that you tuck it down so that the dough doesn't have any space where the pie tin has that crease, okay? The edge. Okay, just pull it down. Pulling it down. Let me just turn it so you could see it. Okay. Okay, now what about all of this outside stuff? Okay, we're going to make a double crust pie. So all of this excess we're going to make into a lattice topping. So what I want to do is you can use scissors, you can just use a regular old knife, but I want to trim it to the edge, okay? You see the edge right here? I want that edge to match up with the lattice topping later, so I want to do as best as I can to trim it to that edge. Okay, so you see, you can kind of go around and feel where that edge is. Make sure that you get up to it. I know it doesn't look like much right now. It looks a little messy, but once you have everything together, it'll make a lot more sense. Okay. If you want to have a tiny bit of overhang for a little pie insurance, you can have that too. Okay, we're almost there. All right. So see all this? We don't want to waste any of this. We're going to re-roll it out, and I'm going to show you how to do the lattice topping with that. Okay, but this, I just want to make sure everything's nice and flat and even. Okay, now this is a frozen fruit pie filling. We are not going to blind bake this crust. We want to make sure when we put the sheet pan in the oven that it's actually a preheated sheet pan, and then the bottom of the crust will get cooked well. So for now, I want to put in my finished frozen fruit pie filling. I'm going to make the lattice crust, preheat my sheet pan and oven, and then we can bake it. Okay, see you then. So let's make the lattice crust. I went ahead and took the scraps from when I cut the pie dough and re-rolled it. And depending on how thick or thin you want your lattice to be, it's basically up to you. So I think I'm going to do a little bit of a thicker lattice, okay? So maybe about 3/4 of an inch or so. And it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? Just basically whatever you're going to cut here. And let's say that you don't have one of these nice rolling cutters. You can just use a knife. That's fine too. Just eyeball it. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. Nobody's going to be measuring your lattice when you eat this, okay? They're just going to be devouring it because it's so delicious. Okay. Whoa. Traveling lattice. Okay. Maybe a little boop at the end. All right, so now what you want to do is you want to take out every other piece so that you can start your lattice. Okay. We're going to fold these down, every other one first. Okay. So as you can see here, I have my strips down, and I have picked up every other strip. And then I have my excess pieces here. So we have a space between each one. Let me show you what they looked like when they were down. And this is generally the measurement of my pie crust. Okay, so 1, 3, and 5. And then we put our center strip right in the middle. And then we fold them down. 1, 3, and 5. Whoops. And then we pick up 2 and 4. And then we put in another strip. Then we fold that down. And then we do it again. 1, 3, and 5. We put down another strip. Okay, now let's do this side. So you see here 1, 3, and 5 is already done. So we're going to pick up 2 and 4 and put down our thicker strip. Okay, then 1, 3, and 5. If you don't have really nice pieces in the end, don't worry about it. Okay, we have a tiny piece here. Where can I put that? Maybe on this side, 2 and 4. Okay, so this might not look like much right now, but when we put it on top of our pie, we can kind of fix it up. So this is really soft, and I want to make sure that it gets nice and solid before I put it onto the pie crust. So I'm going to put this in the freezer for a few minutes to get nice and cold. Okay. Now we can finish our frozen fruit pie. Our lattice has chilled, our bottom crust has chilled, our pie filling is ready, and so let's assemble and bake. Remember that we have to have a preheated sheet pan in the oven, so it's waiting for me. If you don't have that, then you have the danger of having an undercooked bottom crust. Okay, so we have our filling already made, and it's wonderful. And that goes in. Oh, that looks so good. Okay, we'll just want to spread that. Okay, I want to get as much of this juice as possible. Then, with our lattice crust, we're going to gently unmold it. Okay? So, since it's frozen, it has good stability right now, good structure. So I'm going to just take it in my hand. I'm going to lift the parchment off as easily as possible. Okay. Okay. Now I'm just going to lay it on top of my crust. Beautiful. Okay. Now I have some egg wash here. Because our dough is already very moist, we really don't need to egg wash the crust to the crust, but if you really want to, you can. Okay, so for example, you would just take the edge here and then make sure that it adheres properly. But like I said, it has so much moisture in it. This egg wash for me is really for the top, and that way it gets really, really golden. Okay, so I want to pinch my edges, making sure. And you might have some extra over here. You can do whatever you want with that. So you can tear it off if you want. You can kind of patch it up if you like. Maybe put it in areas that's missing some pie crust. We're not really going to do a crimp pattern on the side here. Okay. So we're just going to clean it up. So for example, see right here we have a space. So I would just put a little piece of pie crust right there. Okay. Now if you really want, you could do a tiny crimp pattern, but don't think it's necessary. What would it look like anyway? Like, ugh, you can barely even get anything here. So no, we're just going to do it nice and flat. And we're going to egg wash the top. So it'll have a really beautiful color, and also it will bake really evenly. And we're also going to sprinkle some sugar on top, and that will be wonderful. Now, why is lattice traditional for this type of pie? Well, it's because this type of pie usually leaks, okay, in the way that it gets so hot on the inside that some of it has to come out. And so you do need some space or some vent holes, and the lattice pattern is really perfect for that. But if you wanted to do a full double crust, you could. Just make sure you cut a hole in it. Or you can also do streusel on top too. That's called Dutch blueberry pie. Okay? And the great thing about streusel is that you don't have to cut any vent holes because there's plenty of air for the circulation, or to evaporate, excuse me. Okay, so I'm going to sprinkle some sugar on top, and this will make it a little bit crispy, give it a little bit of that sweet edge. But for me, it's mainly about the texture. If I had turbinado sugar right now, I would use that. But we're not going out to the grocery store, so I don't. Okay, this is ready to bake. So let's put it in our oven, and we're going to bake it until it's done. What does that mean? It's going to be deep golden brown, okay? Don't hesitate to bake it longer than you think you need to bake this, because that crust on the bottom needs to cook. And if you have it only a very light color, you're going to have raw crust on the bottom, okay? Let's do this. So now our blueberry pie is out of the oven. I took it out of the oven based on the color. So I know that usually we do some sort of a toothpick test or some sort of a tap test, but with a pie that's very difficult. So you want to gauge it by the color, assuming that you're baking it at the right temperature. So we have a very deep golden brown here, but I really want you to see the edge of this pie, which is why I baked it in the glass container. Look at how golden brown and caramelized the side that is. You can't see that in a normal pie tin. And so again, remember that we put this in a preheated half sheet pan and made sure that it went in to that hot oven. So that ensured that we have properly cooked crust. Now, you might be tempted to cut the pie right now, but it actually needs time to set. That frozen fruit that was cooked in the oven, it's still warm, it's still too soft. So I would say at least 2 or 3 hours you should wait for it, if not longer. So some people are like, oh, can I just put it in the refrigerator? You can put it in the fridge, but then you will have cold pie. So I would just leave it out room temperature for 3 or 4 hours, and then you could cut it. If you want really clean cuts, you can also freeze it, cut it, and then you'll have really nice clean cuts, but then you can't reheat it. So it's kind of a catch-22. How do you really want to serve it? So we will enjoy this with probably some vanilla ice cream, and we're not going to cut it too early because, like I said, it's going to just slosh all over the place. So happy baking!